I want you to picture something for a moment.
Okay.
It's a Sunday morning, the sun is out, you decide you want to learn how to be a race car driver.
Sounds fun.
Right. But instead of going to an actual track, you go to this massive, totally empty parking lot.
Ah, I see.
You set up some orange cones, you practice accelerating in a straight line, you practice parallel parking, perfectly between the lines, and you do this every single weekend for a year. You become the absolute master of that parking lot. You never hit a cone. You never stall. You feel like a total pro.
I can see exactly where this is going. You've built this incredible confidence, but totally in a vacuum.
Exactly. You feel invincible. But then for your final exam, someone just drops you onto I-4 in Florida.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's raining sideways. It's rush hour. There's a semi-truck drifting into your lane. People are honking, cutting you off, slamming on their brakes. And suddenly you realize that parallel parking in an empty lot has absolutely nothing to do with surviving that chaos.
That is a terrifying image, but it is actually the perfect analogy for what we're talking about today. It's the performance gap.
And that tension right there, that's the heartbeat of this deep dive today. We are looking at a really fascinating piece from Valor Tech.
Yeah, published pretty recently.
Right, February 26, 2026. It's titled, What is Scenario-Based Firearms Training? And the premise is a bit of a wake-up call, honestly.
It really is.
It suggests that the vast majority of people who own firearms for, people who go to the range religiously, they are basically rehearsing for the empty parking lot.
Right. But they are preparing for a crash on the highway.
Yes.
It creates this really sharp distinction between what they call rehearsing comfort and practicing decisions.
Rehearsing comfort. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, and if you carry a firearm, or honestly, even if you just keep one at home for protection, this deep dive is going to totally challenge the way you think about what it actually means to be ready.
So, the mission today is to unpack this gap. We need to understand why being a crack shot on the range, hitting that bullseye every single time, why that might actually mean very little when a real-world problem just kicks in your front door.
Because it's the difference between mechanics and mindset. It's about understanding that shooting is a motor skill, right? But fighting or defending yourself is a cognitive process.
Okay, so to understand where we're going, we really have to look at where most people are right now, the status quo.
A baseline, yeah.
When I go to the range, and I suspect this is true for most of our listeners, it's a very controlled, almost ritualistic environment.
Very predictable.
Yeah, I'm in a lane. There are dividers. I have my eye protection on, my ear protection. I have a paper target that is, usually a silhouette of a bad guy or a zombie or something.
Always facing square at you.
Right. It's 7 yards away. I stand still. It stands still.
And you probably have a routine. You might run what we call a bill drill.
Oh, yeah, drawing and firing 6 shots fast into the center. Exactly. Or maybe a 1 to 5 drill. These are total industry standards. And I want to be very clear here. The source material isn't saying these are bad.
No, not at all.
Valor Tech explicitly says drills are necessary. They build the mechanical foundation. Because if you can't hit the target when nobody is stressing you out, you certainly aren't going to hit it when someone is actually attacking you.
Right. You need to know how to operate the machine. You have to know where the brake pedal is before you drive in actual traffic.
Exactly.
But the article suggests there's a trap here. A psychological trap.
It's called the illusion of competence. See, drills are what we call block training. You do the same thing over and over until it feels smooth.
And we like that feeling.
Oh, your brain loves that. It releases dopamine when you get faster or when you see that tight grouping of holes right in the center of the paper. But drills actually lie to your brain about what a fight really is.
In what way do they lie?
Well, think about the neural pathways you're building. On a flat range, the threat is always directly in front of you. At eye level.
And the solution to the problem is always to shoot. You never draw your gun at the range and decide, actually, I shouldn't pull the trigger.
That's a huge point. I don't think I've ever gone to the range, drawn my weapon, aimed, and then just reholstered without firing.
Nobody does. So you are subconsciously scripting a reaction. Gun comes out, gun goes bang.
Which in the real world.
That script can land you in prison.
Yeah.
Also, consider the environment itself. On the range, nobody moves. The target doesn't scream at you. It doesn't beg for its life. It doesn't drop a weapon and suddenly surrender. And crucially, nobody is shooting back or pressuring you.
The source uses a term I really liked for this, drill theater.
It's perfect. Because it's choreography. You know exactly what's going to happen before the timer even beeps. You are just performing a dance with the loud noise at the end.
So the insight here is that drills answer the question, can you shoot? But scenario-based training answers a totally different question.
Right.
Can you solve a problem?
Can you solve a human problem under extreme pressure? That is the metric that actually matters.
Okay, so let's pivot a bit. If standing in a lane is just theater, what does the reality look like? Like, what is the anatomy of valid scenario-based training?
It's much more complex.
Is it just, I don't know, running around a warehouse playing paintball?
It's definitely not just playing tag with guns. Valortech breaks this down into 4 critical components that make a scenario valid. If it doesn't have these, it really is just a game.
Okay.
The first one is context.
Which basically means setting the stage, right?
Right. It's not just an empty room. It's a parking lot at night, or a really narrow aisle in a convenience store, or a hallway in your own home.
Places you actually go.
Exactly. And your brain processes visual information totally differently depending on the setting.
Yeah.
If you're in a parking lot, your brain should be looking for cars, cover, exits. If you're in a hallway, you're dealing with a confined space.
Then there's the second component, which is the problem. And this is where the variables come in.
This is the variable that breaks the script we talked about. Maybe the lights are low, maybe there are family members present, and that changes your angles of fire completely.
Right.
Maybe the person approaching you isn't even attacking. Maybe they're just asking for directions, but they're doing it aggressively.
Which leads directly to the third component, decision points. This feels like the most critical shift from the range.
It absolutely is.
Right.
In a drill, the decision is already made before you even start. You're going to shoot. In a scenario, you have to cycle through options in real time.
Like a flow chart in your head.
Exactly. Do I shoot? Do I issue a verbal command? Do I physically push them back? Do I just run away?
Yeah.
You have to process information. You're not just executing a movement.
And finally, the fourth component is consequences.
This is the teacher. Bad choices must result in immediate bad outcomes.
Because in the real world, a bad choice means you get hurt or you go to jail.
Right, so in training, if you make a bad choice, you get shot by a training projectile, which stings, or the scenario fails, and the instructor stops you right there to say, okay, you just shot an unarmed man, let's discuss why. You really have to feel the weight of the error.
It seems like we're talking about shifting the focus from the hands to the brain entirely, from mechanics to processing power.
That's the key takeaway right there. We are moving from manual dexterity to cognitive processing speed.
I want to dig into why this is so hard. The source talks about the context crash.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like I've experienced a mild version of this, like when you walk into a room and totally forget why you're there just because someone asks you a random question, your brain just buffers.
It's the blue screen of death for your cognitive processing. The context crash is what happens when a shooter who is amazing on the flat range suddenly faces a dynamic, chaotic living environment.
It all falls apart.
It does.
Yeah.
The source details 5 specific failures that happen here. These are the things that drills simply cannot prepare you for.
Let's walk through these because I think this is where the why really clicks for people.
Yeah.
Failure number 1 is threat discrimination.
This is massive. On the range, the target is the target. You know it's the enemy because it's a literal piece of paper.
Right.
In a scenario or in real life, you have to figure that out in a split second. Is that a gun in their hand or is it a black cell phone? Is that person running towards you, attacking you, or are they running away from someone else?
The article mentions the misinterpreted fight, right? Like you walk in on 2 people fighting. Who is the bad guy?
Exactly. If you intervene and shoot the undercover cop who is wrestling a suspect, you have made a catastrophic error.
Wow.
And static drills don't train this discrimination because they've already told you who to shoot.
Yeah.
So when you get into a scenario, you burn precious seconds just staring, trying to figure out what you're even looking at.
Failure number 2 is verbal skills. This is interesting because I don't think I've ever heard anyone shouting commands at the local indoor range. It would be kind of weird.
It would be super socially awkward, so we just don't do it. But the physiological reality is that under extreme stress, people tend to do one of 2 things. They either go totally mute or they scream incoherent nonsense.
Auditory exclusion kicks in, right? And you just lose your ability to speak.
Exactly. But in a defensive encounter, your voice is often your first weapon. You need to de-escalate if possible, or give clear, authoritative commands like stop or get back.
Which takes practice.
Right, if you haven't practiced drawing your firearm while simultaneously shouting a command, you probably won't be able to do it when your heart rate is 180 beats per minute. Your brain just can't handle the multitasking unless you've built that pathway.
That coordination, speaking and moving at the same time, it seems incredibly difficult if you've never actually done it.
It is.
Okay, failure number 3. movement.
The planted feet syndrome.
Yeah.
Range lanes teach you to stand perfectly still, get a perfect grip, find your stance, and fire. It's very static. But real defense usually requires you to get off the line of attack.
You have to move.
You need to move to cover, move to put a barrier between you and the threat, or move to an exit.
And if you spent 10 years planting your feet like a statue every time you touch a gun, that's exactly what you'll do when a knife comes out. You'll just be a stationary target.
Muscle memory works both ways. You can memorize bad habits just as easily as good ones.
That makes a lot of sense. Number 4 is tunnel vision. We hear this term a lot in movies and stuff, but how does it manifest here?
It's biological. When the adrenaline dump hits, your peripheral vision totally collapses. It's like looking through a toilet paper roll.
Just locked in.
You lock onto the threat. You become obsessed with the danger right in front of you. The problem is, you miss the second attacker flanking you. You miss the exit sign that could literally save your life. You miss the bystander standing right behind the bad guy.
Which segues perfectly into failure number 5, legal reality. The source specifically mentions Florida here, but they note this principle applies almost everywhere in the U.S.
This is where the rubber meets the road legally. We're just reporting what the article outlines here, but the expert notes that I felt weird. Is not a legal defense for using lethal force?
Right. I didn't like the way he looked. Doesn't exactly hold up in court.
No. You have to articulate why you were in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm. And scenario training pressures you to make choices that are legally defensible. It forces you to exercise restraint.
Because the paper target never asks you to show restraint.
Exactly. Maybe the guy's aggressive, screaming right in your face,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have a weapon. If you shoot him in a scenario, the instructor stops and says, okay, that's 20 years for manslaughter. Let's talk about why. You don't get that kind of feedback on the flat range.
That is a really sobering thought. It implies that training isn't just about surviving the physical fight, it's about surviving the aftermath.
100%. The fight lasts 5 seconds. The legal aftermath lasts the rest of your life.
I want to make this really concrete for the listener. The source provides these super vivid examples of what scenario training actually looks like. I want you to walk us through these because just reading them was stressful enough for me. Let's take scenario A, the parking lot.
Okay, visualize this. You're loading groceries into your trunk. It's dark out. An unknown person approaches you fast. Their hands are hidden in a hoodie pocket. They're closing the distance aggressively.
Now, in a drill, you just wait for a boop and shoot. But here,
Your primary problem is distance management. You have to yell, stop, stay back. You have to watch those hands. Maybe they pull out a knife, then you act. But maybe they pull out a set of keys and say, oh man, sorry, I thought this was my Uber. If you're stuck in drill mode, you might draw on a totally innocent person.
wow.
The challenge isn't the shooting, it's the agonizing decision of when to act. And you have to do it while backing up, checking behind you for cars, and protecting your personal space.
Let's look at scenario B, the convenience store. You're in a narrow aisle, maybe you're just grabbing a soda.
Right. There's a clear threat at the end of the aisle, maybe a guy with a bat or a gun. But there are innocent people, a mom and a kid, moving behind him or running past him in a panic. This is what we call a backstop issue.
Because on the range, the dirt berm is the backstop. It's literally always safe to shoot.
Correct. But here, the correct decision might actually be, don't shoot. Even if you have a clear shot at the bad guy, if you miss, or even if the bullet just passes right through him, you hit that kid.
That's terrifying.
Scenario training forces you to hold your fire under extreme pressure, to maneuver for a better angle, which feels terrible because you want to stop the threat, but it's totally necessary to avoid a tragedy.
Okay, scenario C is the one that really stressed me out reading it. The vehicle encounter.
This is the most neglected area of training by far. We spend a huge percentage of our lives in cars. But have you ever tried to draw a firearm while buckled into a seatbelt?
I know for me, I can barely get my wallet out at the drive-thru.
Exactly. It's a physical nightmare. You have the seatbelt locking up against your chest. You have the steering wheel crushing your gut. You have the door pillar blocking your left arm. And you're sitting down, which changes the angle of your holster completely.
That changes everything.
Most people never practice this until they are literally being carjacked.
And suddenly you realize your fancy draw stroke, the one you practice standing perfectly up in front of a mirror, is totally useless.
And you realize that shooting through glass is super unpredictable. Windshields deflect bullets. The sound of a gunshot inside a closed car is permanently deafening. It disorients you immediately. It adds this layer of sensory overload that you just cannot simulate standing in a quiet lane.
The last one mentioned is the home entry, dealing with doorways and family.
This brings in the angles problem. But the biggest factor here is loved ones. If your spouse is behind you or your kids are in the room down the hall, you can't just spray fire.
You have to know what's behind the target.
You have to account for everyone. That adds an emotional and cognitive load, this intense fear for others that a flat range can never simulate. You have to identify friendly versus threat in the dark.
It really highlights how much we take for granted when we're just punching holes in paper. But the source mentions one more level. They call it the pinnacle, force on force.
Yes, if scenario training is the master's degree, force on force is the PhD.
What distinguishes this? Is it just like harder scenarios?
It's the thinking adversary. Up until now, we've talked about paper targets or maybe instructors role-playing passively. Force on force involves a live human opponent who is also armed with non-lethal training rounds, like simunitions or high-end airsoft.
Do they shoot back?
They shoot back, they move, they lie to you, they try to flank you. They don't want to get hit any more than you do. This changes absolutely everything.
It brings in what they call the pain penalty.
It does. Simunitions sting. They leave real welts. It doesn't cause actual injury, but it hurts enough that your little brain says, I do not want to do that again.
Your body reacts to it as a real threat.
That fear, that hesitation, that is the closest you can possibly get to real combat stress without actually risking your life.
The source says this is where the ego breaks.
I think that's the most powerful line in the text. On the flat range, you can protect your ego. You can say, oh, I pulled that shot a little left because my grip slipped.
Make excuses.
In force on force, if you get shot, you failed. There's no arguing with it. The opponent simply outsmarted you. It strips away the fantasy that you're John Wick. And that moment when the ego breaks is where true learning finally begins.
Because the opponent doesn't follow a script. They aren't going to just stand there and let you run your neat little drill.
Right. They're going to hide behind a car and wait for you to make a mistake. And they will exploit it.
So who is this for? Because frankly, this sounds really intense and probably expensive. Is this just for SWAT teams and soldiers?
The source is absolutely adamant about this. No, it is for anyone who carries a firearm for defense, especially in places like Florida or really any busy area with parking lots, crowded stores, potential road rage.
The article lists concealed carriers, parents, home defenders.
Think about it. Police get this training. Soldiers get this training. Why? Because their lives depend on it. If you are a parent carrying a gun to protect your family, why would you accept a lower standard of preparation?
That's a great point.
The stakes are exactly the same. The bullet doesn't care if you're a Navy SEAL or a soccer mom.
That really lands. It's so easy to think, I'm just a regular person, I don't need the commando stuff. But what we've described, talking to people, moving around cars, checking for exits, that's not commando stuff. That's just everyday decision-making.
Precisely. It's problem solving. It's not about being a ninja. It's about knowing what to do when a stranger approaches you in a dark parking lot. That's not a military operation. That's just a Tuesday night.
So if we look at the summary here, the main takeaway is actually surprisingly simple.
It is. Drills make you a better shooter. Scenarios make you a better defender. You really need both. You need the mechanics, but you absolutely must stress test them in the chaos of reality.
Confidence derived solely from the shooting ranges.
A fantasy. It's a comfort rehearsal. And as the source says, if your training doesn't match the environment you live in, you aren't actually prepared.
This has been a massive wake-up call. It makes me want to look at my own skills and realize how flat they really are.
It should. It's uncomfortable. But that discomfort is where the growth happens.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. It's a question that really sticks with you from the text.
If you found yourself in a high-stakes, life-or-death situation right now, in your car, in a parking lot, wherever you are listening to this, would your brain automatically start looking for a lane and waiting for a beep? Or are you actually prepared to solve a chaotic, unscripted human problem?
Something to think about next time you're driving past that empty parking lot. Thanks for diving in with us.
Stay safe.